You should be in the first row.
Thank you all for being here. Thank you to our candidates for coming out. You've got very busy schedules and, you have very busy schedules, but as you can see, your constituency is very interested to hear from you. I'm Laura Walls, and I have moderated sessions here before. I come at the request of Dorothy Jessup, and I want to thank the Political Affairs Committee for getting this together. The communication between Dorothy and I has been rather recent, so we're going to go with the flow. And we have a very different setup because of the availability of candidates. So we have candidates from different levels of government, and that's unique to us doing this here. There'll be another session tomorrow night at the same time, and tomorrow night you'll have the candidates Jen Metzger for County Executive, State Senator Susan Serino for re-election, Congressman Pat Ryan for re-election, and candidate for State Senate Pat Sheehan. But tonight, we have 5 people. No, we have 4 people. We have 5 because we have one on Zoom. And I'd like to introduce that tonight we have State Senator Michelle Hinchey, and next to her, Ulster County Sheriff Juan Figueroa. And to my right, we have Ulster Town Supervisor James Quigley, who's running for County Executive. And, excuse me, I'm losing my place here. And our congressional contestant, Mr. Schmidt. And also on Zoom, we have Assemblywoman Sarah Hannah Shrestra. So the plan for tonight is an opportunity for you to know more about the candidates. It started, as you saw, with some informal time, and it'll end with some informal time as well, because all the questions are going to come from the audience, and not everybody's question may get asked, not everybody's answer might be satisfactory, so you'll get another opportunity to just follow up with the candidates. Each of our candidates will give an opening statement explaining why they're running for office and what is most important about their election or re-election. And then all the questions will come from the audience. And I'd like to ask that when I bring the microphone for you to ask a question, ask it don't take about a minute or less to ask your question. And each candidate will have 2 to 3 minutes to answer. Now, it's very different, and we're just going to roll with it tonight. But because we don't have the opponents of our candidates, and we have candidates from federal, state, and county, it's just going to be different. So based on the questions, the person you ask it of can answer it, but then the other candidates can have an opportunity to pipe in on the topic of your question. So this is how we're gonna try to make this work tonight. I've been told that we have many recent new members, residents here at Woodland Pond, and there's a growing diversity of perspectives both on government and governance. And so I'm expecting that we're going to have some good questions and some lively conversation. So I'll start with Congressman candidate. Yes, I'll bring you the candidate. Okay, I think that'll be easier.
Stay seated, or
You can stand. Whatever is your MO.
in the Army, we just like to follow the rules. Good evening, everybody. I'm Colin Schmidt, running for the new 18th Congressional District, which is all of Orange County, where I'm from, most of Dutchess County, and Kingston South here in Ulster County. Currently, I serve as a New York State Assemblyman. I'm in my 4th year, 2nd term, representing parts of Orange and Rockland counties. I am the ranking member of the Local Governments Committee in the State Assembly, which in the State Assembly is the most bipartisan committee in state government. We pass the most amount of bills that are bipartisan in nature, co-sponsored by both parties, as well as the most amount of bills for both parties. Proud to be ranked as one of the most bipartisan members of the State Assembly. I'm also a sergeant in the New York Army National Guard. Currently, I'm stationed down at Camp Smith in northern Westchester County. I was activated for the federal COVID-19 relief mission during the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic, where we deployed down, we were the first units into New York City to set up the emergency hospitals that were set up down there, and we were the front line to bring the original PPE, hand sanitizer, emergency medical supplies to this entire region, and then eventually across the state of New York. I live in the town of New Windsor with my wife, Nikki. She's the broker of our family's 3rd generation commercial business. We're also an agent as well. We have our adopted dog, Quincy, who is, he's usually the biggest celebrity of everybody. And I decided to run for the new congressional seat. I know everything kind of got moved around, so we say just forget what happened yesterday, because it's going to be all new districts come November. So I decided to run because I'm a true believer that we need checks and balances in government. Right now, from the State House to the White House, we're under one-party control. And I don't think that's what best serves the residents of the Hudson Valley or the residents of this country. Having to have some compromise, having to have some discussions, having to work together to achieve a goal is what I believe is important in how we get a most reasonable governance that can possibly be achieved. There are a lot of issues that are impacting our communities, impacting our seniors, and impacting our country. I'm sure we'll be getting into them at all levels of government that were stated here. But a few quick topics, obviously. The economy, that's been on top of mind for a lot of folks that I've been speaking to. The inflation issues, cost of groceries, cost of gas, cost of everyday goods and services. It's become very debilitating for many people. I understand that. Feeling it myself and my own family. We want to tackle a lot of the issues when it comes to the inflation crisis, when it comes to supply chain issues, when it comes to energy independence issues. Public safety, law and order, yet another big topic that I've heard from a lot of folks in our community.
Recording in progress.
Ensuring that we support law enforcement, that we provide the fundings necessary and the tools and the ability for them to do their job. The fentanyl crisis, another major issue. The leading cause of death in America for young Americans 18 to 45 years old is the fentanyl crisis, stopping the flow of illicit fentanyl into our country. Also, I know I was asked several times here also about concerns with Social Security and Medicare. We have a commitment to America. It's the Republican candidates running for Congress, commitment to America if we win back the House majority. And right there, one of our top points is to protect, secure, and ensure the long-term viability of Social Security. And I'll get very specific so we get into it. That means we will never reduce benefits a single penny. We will never increase retirement age a single hour. We'll ensure that it is there, permanence, to provide the benefits that you've earned and that you've been guaranteed, and that is a generational commitment to our seniors now and our seniors to come. So, got a lot of other people to talk. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to chatting throughout the rest of the day.
have Supervisor Quigley running for County Executive.
Good evening. You know, I look at the candidates here, and I'm the oldest candidate here, and I am eligible for Social Security, so thank you for that pledge. My name is Jim Quigley. I'm running for Ulster County Executive. How did I get here?
Sorry, it's my fault. It's my fault. No, not my fault. It's my fault. It's came back now. I'm just fixing it in a second. I'll fix it.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. The Quigley family has been in the Ulster, Kingston area since 1849. I grew up in Kingston. I married the girl next door who I met when I was 11. And in my career, which I started late, I worked in New York City for 25 years, retiring in 2011 as a partner in an investment firm. I'm a certified public accountant. I was a chief financial officer of a company that managed over $1 billion, and I had hundreds of employees reporting to me in the finance function. In 2006, the Ulster County Legislature determined that they wanted to change the form of the government in Ulster County by breaking it up and creating the position of controller and executive. 2008, I ran for Ulster County Controller as a Republican. I lost by 174 votes out of 93,000. I don't think I did bad, but I'm still looking for those 174 people. So what did I learn from that? The end of the campaign, I had a lot of stories about my family and how they impacted the community. My grandparents had a corner grocery store in Kingston on the corner of South Wall Street and Greenkill Avenue. And throughout the county, people would come up to me and ask me how I was related to those older people at that time who gave away the candy, and sometimes when my grandmother wasn't looking, the extra ice cream scoop. I explained to them that they were my grandparents and that I had the opportunity to grow up and work in that store. An opportunity that taught me about customer service and how to relate to people. But there was also stories that came out about my grandmother's little black book. Because for those of you who remember the 30s, 40s, and early 50s, there were no shopping centers and there were no grocery stores. The corner grocery store was the establishment that fed the neighborhood. That little black book was the story of families who bought and traded with my grandparents, and sometimes, due to crises within their family, were extended credit that helped people get through the tough times, some of which were never repaid. And little did I understand what that little black book meant for my own family, because after my grandmother died, I found out how much credit they had expended to my father and mother in their tough times. My point was that this exposed for me a core value of giving back to the community. In 2008, I had the opportunity to meet with Senator John Bonasek and ask him, what do you see in the world of politics? Because I had been bitten by the bug. He said to me, Jimmy, you have to make a fundamental decision for yourself. Is your personality that of an executive, or is that of a legislator? Well, I had won the most votes in the town of Ulster in 2008, and there was a supervisor's election the next year. I am now standing here today, finishing up 13 years as supervisor, the longest elected supervisor in the town of Ulster history. I have been elected 6 times. 4 of them were unopposed, and I was cross-endorsed by the Democrats. In closing, I want to say, I spent the last 5 years as the president of the Supervisors Association. I have worked closely with all the supervisors and the county. My platform is built on a closer relationship between the municipalities at the town level and the county to bring better, effective government to our citizens. Thank you.
And next we have State Senator Michelle Hinchy.
We have, yes, I will not let you forget. Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Thank you. It is great to be here with you today. As you know, I am State Senator Michelle Hinchy, and I have the privilege of representing the current 46th district. And as we said, our lines have changed, so I represent a good portion of Ulster County and North, but I'm running for re-election here in New Paltz. We pick up in our district, we pick up New Paltz and Rosendale and a few other towns, and then across the river. But I ran for office to help people and to help my community. I'm born and raised in Saugerties. I grew up here, went to Saugerties High School. I went off to the Industrial Labor Relations School at Cornell and graduated into the middle of the last recession we had in 2009. And I was really fortunate enough, though, that in that experience, I got a job from an internship that I had had that set me off on a 10-year career path in communications, working for technology companies and media companies. But at the end of the day, I always felt like there was a lot more to do and to give back and to be involved. And I learned that from both of my parents, but especially my father, who I'm sure many of you knew, showing me that hard work, compassion, dedication, bringing all the people to the table, having the conversations. With that work, you can really make positive change in our communities for the better. And I started looking around at how I could give back, how I would get involved, and then my dad got sick. And that was a crash course for me and my family in how broken our healthcare system is. You could think as a congressman that maybe we had some of the best health insurance, and we actually had to sell land to pay for his home care. And if that's what we were facing, right, what in the world is everybody else facing? So in that moment, I stayed on with the company that I was with because it provided me a paycheck, but it also provided me the flexibility to be home with him and to spend the time and to help my mom, who became his primary caregiver. But feeling the way that I felt, got involved with the Delgado campaign. Long story short, decided after that election that I wanted to run for office when I realized that the state senator we had representing my community was not doing what I thought was best for our area. And we ran, we won, and over the last 2 years, I've had the privilege of being the state senator here for the 46th. I passed 53 bills through the legislature. That's the most of any senator, I think any legislator, as a freshman, making me the most effective legislator. And all of those bills but one passed with wide bipartisan support, some of them even unanimously, because we're actually raising, thank you, we are actually raising up the issues that are here in our communities, making sure that things that have been left on the table for too long are now getting real solutions, and also building those coalitions, building those teams. And the one bill that passed along party lines is a bill that protects medical providers, bill I'm proud of, a bill that protects medical providers from adverse action or retaliation if they perform an abortion for someone who comes to New York State from an anti-abortion state, providing the health care that they need. So we've been doing a lot of work in just the last 2 years. We're running for re-election here to continue that work, to continue to upgrade and uplift the Hudson Valley. And I thank you all for being here and for having me and spending some time with us tonight. Thank you.
And next up is our Sheriff, Ulster County Sheriff Figueroa.
I guess I'm the only one that's unopposed that's up here. Nobody's running against me this year. I ran in 2018 and I came here in 2018 and spoke to you folks about what I was going to do. As a retired Marine, I did 22 years in the Marine Corps, both active duty and reserve. I retired as a Chief Warrant Officer. My highest enlisted rank was Master Sergeant. And I was proud to serve the greatest country in the world, which is our country. We have our faults, but we're still the greatest country in the world. I did 25 years in the New York State Police, where I did everything from joint terrorism, special investigations unit, narcotics, money laundering, public corruption, and joint terrorism. I said that I was going to make changes in our office, the sheriff's office. And I say it's our office because although there are a lot of politicians out there, I'm an elected official and there's a difference. What you see is what you get. When I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. I said I was going to change the policy of how we deal with law enforcement and the way we deal with immigration, and I did that because we're not a country from Europe and things that happened over 60 or 70 years ago. This is America. This is a land of immigrants. And one thing I learned about in the Marine Corps was that anywhere I went in the world, there was somebody in the unit who could speak or talk the language or understand the culture of the country we were in. That is uniquely American. And that's who we are as a nation. We are a nation of immigrants, and I'll never forget that. And that's why I say this is the greatest nation in the world, because I am speaking to you as the first elected Latino sheriff in the state of New York, and that's because of all of you. I said I was going to change the way we deal with the opioid epidemic, and I did that. I started opioid response as county law enforcement. We got a $900,000 grant, and we had social workers and peer advocates that are going out to get people into rehab, and more importantly, help the silent victims, which are the family members, because they weren't going to call us. Why would they? They would have to pay bail. They would have to pay lawyers' fees in regards to the drug arrests that would be involved with their loved ones. We had to change that because we knew, especially me, after doing so many years in narcotics, that it's time to do something different that is probably going to work and help the citizens of this county. And tomorrow, we're going to get another grant for Oracle for $1.3 million, and I'm really proud of that team and what they accomplished. But make no mistake, we're still doing our traditional police work. In June of this year, we made the largest seizure of drugs and narcotics in the history of this county, and that was a Democratic administration and a sheriff that's a Democrat. The military and law enforcement belongs to all of us. And when I make a decision, I make it for all of us. And there's no political affiliation associated with public safety. I will continue to do my job, and that's why I'm asking for another 4 years with our new innovative programs like the Anti-Violence Effort Response Team, our Professional Standards Division that I just stood up a couple of months ago, and I will continue to serve you as the sheriff and the caretaker of your seat. Thank you.
Whoa, we got some serious people up here. It's going to be a good evening. Okay, so we're going to move on to, oh, I'm sorry, Assemblywoman, have not met you, I'm sorry. Sarah Shrestha, correct?
Yes. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Excellent. All right, let me know when I can go.
Go ahead. Go ahead and start.
All right. Thank you, everyone. I have to say, I'm going to start off right off the bat by saying how disappointed I am that I'm not there, because we've been trying to get into Woodland Pond since I ran for the primary, and I finally got my invite, but we had some COVID protocol kick in our team, and of course it's always better to be safe, but I hope to see you all in person after this event. I'm sure we can arrange something. So, you know, as the sheriff just said, this is a land of immigrants. I came to America as an immigrant. I was born and raised in Nepal, and when I win this election, I will be the first generation immigrant elected to this office in this area. I will also be the first Nepali American state legislator in the New York State Legislature, and I will be the first South Asian state legislator outside of New York City. And I just want to start by, by our latest count, our team has directly talked to over 14,000 people at this point since we started knocking doors and making calls back in November of 2021 when we announced this race. And I have personally talked to over 2,000 people in this district, which, you know, it is amazing how many stories we've heard and how many lives we've had a glance into. And the thing that inspired me the most is how welcomed I was when I showed up at folks' doors, you know, when I was on the phone. This was a very welcoming experience for me. And I even, you know, encountered some people who were so proud of me as an immigrant to be doing this, to have come so far. And that's the inspiration that I really needed to continue after the primary. And that's what I always think about, you know, when it gets very exhausting and very tiring at the end of the day. It's always good when I meet people and I'm reminded about how much is at stake at this time. So I ran for the state assembly because there are a lot of crises happening right now. And you know, to me, I am not one of those people who thinks of issues as having different lanes. My perspective is that everything is entangled and interconnected, primarily with our economy. And the fact that we are going through an affordability crisis, we're going through a housing crisis, we're going through a healthcare crisis, and the fact that we've been dealing with these types of crises before since a long time ago, and we still have not been able to apply a long-lasting solution at the root, means there still is a lot of work to be done. But I'm not here innovating, you know, I'm not here coming up with new solutions. I'm still fighting for solutions that a lot of people a long time ago before me have been fighting for. And you know, so when I ran, we really wanted to make sure that we were building a movement that was multi-generational. And I have to say that, you know, of the people that we encountered, some of our, and this is contrary to, I think, what people might think about our race, some of our strongest supporters were over the age of 80, and most of the people who voted in our election were women over the age of 50. So I just want to confirm and reconfirm that none of the things that we are dealing with are particularly new issues. You know, they're just long neglected issues that we really have to start addressing at the root. And I am very excited at the opportunity to serve you in this state legislature. It is a task that I take very seriously. Everything that we have to pass in the state has to go through the state Senate and the state assembly. So I'm looking forward to working closely with Senator Michelle Hinchey.
Well, thank you. Are you going to be available for questions for the rest of the evening, for the next hour?
Yes.
Okay, all right. And I've just been notified by Mr. Schmidt that he has to leave by 8. So anyone who has a particular question for him, let's do that. We'll accommodate that schedule, and then, you know, we have the rest of our guests for a little while. So if you have a question, be like me and hold it to your mouth. Try to keep your question to a minute.
This is to Mr. Schmidt. It's closer. Your concern, your statement of the concerns that we all have, and you left out abortion, which concerns more than half of the female population. More than half of the population of this country is female. What's your position on this?
Thank you for the question. Personally, I'm pro-life. That's been my voting record in the state legislature. I come from it from a common sense, compassionate approach. I don't believe in extremisms on either side of the matter, and the decisions that were made have sent this issue back to the state legislature, and any action should be taken by the state legislature. Is not the place of the federal government.
Anyone else, a particular question for
Can you comment on that, or should we just do straight? We'll come back to it.
Yes.
Mr. Schmidt, since I know you have to leave, this is for all of you, but Mr. Schmidt, we'll start with you. On election night, when the votes are sent to the Board of Elections and counted, when the absentee votes are brought in and counted and certified by the commissioners, will you accept the results that are certified by those commissioners?
Thank you. Thank you for the question. Absolutely.
So I'll take one more question for Mr. Schmidt, and then we'll do the whole tab, and we'll come back to that particular question on the count.
Hi, thank you, first of all, for coming here. You mentioned that your stance on Medicare and Social Security is one that you would defend without issue. However, there are extremists in that party that you belong to who have talked about Medicare and Social Security as being entitlement programs that should be evaluated every 5 years or so to make decisions. Are you going to push back against that, given what you just said about standing tall, and protecting Medicare and Social Security? Because there is movement in that direction among some, and the entitlement issue is problematic to me, and I think to a lot of people.
You're getting your steps in. Thank you as well for that question. And absolutely, that is my commitment to you. It's a commitment to all the residents of this district. I actually had a specific forum on these issues. It was virtual, you can bring it up. It was 3 days ago on the Empire Report. Certainly encourage you to view that whole segment. It was a 30-minute segment with both candidates on Medicare, on Social Security, on affordable prescription drugs, and on long-term care. And particularly on the two issues you just asked about, my commitment and the commitment that I signed on to with the Commitment to America for the new House majority, there will be no reduction. There will be no addition in time. There will be no privatization. There will be no reductions. There will be none of that. I can't speak for what everybody else in other offices, what their beliefs are. They're not my beliefs. And I will not stand for any of those changes that you're concerned about. I'd be the first one to vote against them, regardless of who and what party put it up. And that's something in Albany. It's one of the most bipartisan legislators in the state assembly. I've been somebody who's worked across the aisle. I've been a member of the super minority. The Republican conference in the assembly, we're called the super minority. We admit, we know we're not a large group in Albany. So to get any bills done, from local on up, either have to join as a co-sponsor or have co-sponsors of the other party. That's their chamber rules. So all the bills that I passed or worked to pass had to work across the aisle. And that's made me one of the people in my conference to vote with the other side or vote against the party the most. Because if it makes sense for my district or if it makes sense for the Hudson Valley, I'm willing to do it. And I'll just add one more thing on to this statement. A nice individual had asked me earlier about a piece of legislation or issues working with the other side. And in the assembly, since my first term, working to protect our local community pharmacies. We've had real problems with our local community pharmacies. There's been many lost across the state, many lost in the Hudson Valley because they've been dealing with PBMs. I was the first Republican in the state assembly, my first term, to sign on to legislation to protect our local community pharmacies. And I joined together with the health chairman, someone who we very rarely would agree. But I joined together with the health chairman to be the only Republican to co-sponsor that legislation. There's now been subsequent legislation, multiple subsequent legislation that I've co-sponsored or supported. I started out as the only Republican to vote for it, and we eventually brought almost the entire conference on board to get as close to unanimous support to protect our community pharmacies and provide and expand the services that they can provide. So that's just one example, but I think particularly for our senior population, but all in our community, to have that frontline access to health care through our community pharmacies. And I I know that I have to run. We have one more event scheduled for tonight. I did want to spend an hour with everybody here. We're going to leave some information, which includes my direct contact information for those who did not get to speak with me in the smaller group earlier, or to answer any other additional questions, provide information. I certainly appreciate everybody's outreach and the ability to interact, and I certainly ask for your vote and support. And if you don't vote support for me and I'm still blessed to be elected, you still can reach out to me with your input, your concerns, your suggestions, and for your help on constituent matters, because that's always been my standard. We might not always agree 100% of the time, but when I'm elected to represent everybody and to represent your needs and to assist you in any way. So thank you, I really appreciate it.
Thank you, we appreciate your time and thoughtfulness. Okay, the prior question, what was it? Huh?
Election integrity.
And
Oh.
abortion.
Right, okay, well, there you go.
On election integrity. I'll tell you a little story about 2008. We sat there for 2 weeks counting ballots, and in the box, there are ballots that are set aside for challenges. Those are the ballots that usually, when it gets contentious, are sent to the judge and a ruling is requested as to whether to open them. I was losing by 82 votes. We got down to the challenge box. My personal opinion was every vote counts, every vote got opened. I was down by 174 votes at the end of the election. I got up across the table, I went and shook Mr. Auerbach's hand, and I said, "Congratulations, Mr. Controller." So short answer is, absolutely. If not, my son would kill me. He's the Republican election commissioner.
Thank you.
Can I take both questions?
Yes.
Together, I'll be quick on them. Yes, love it, thank you. Short answer for the outcome of the election, absolutely. Count every vote except the outcome, absolutely. On the abortion question, I just want to take our choice question, reproductive health care question, we should call it here. I want to be clear, I am the only pro-choice candidate in our Senate race. My opponent voted against the Reproductive Health Act, which is what codified the right to an abortion and reproductive health care here in New York in 2019. And as I stated, my legislation in our opening, making sure that medical providers are not, there's no adverse action on them should they perform health care. Abortion and reproductive care is absolutely still a New York State issue. We've seen federally the abdication from the Supreme Court that it now must be a state issue. That was a horrendous decision. But so it's really important that we have people elected at the state level who are fighting every day to make sure that those rights stay in place. And also the access to reproductive care and health care is something that we do not have well here in the state of New York. In Columbia County, which is in the 41st district, you cannot have a baby in Columbia County. There are no OBGYN services. That is unfathomable. We have to invest in that. Also, our independent healthcare facilities and our hospitals are being purchased by religious affiliated hospitals because they're the ones that have the funds. And when they merge, when they consolidate, many of our upstate hospitals are losing reproductive care. They're losing end-of-life care, reproductive care, and gender-affirming care because it's a policy-based exclusion from that religious affiliated hospital. I carry legislation called the Hospital Transparency Act that would require hospitals to be transparent about the services they don't provide based on policy. And it also directs the Department of Health, the State Department of Health, to keep track of that, to publish it as well, and to do studies on healthcare deserts to make sure that where there are healthcare deserts specifically for abortion access, reproductive care access, we see that, we can fund it, we can create better regulations or new legislation to make sure these services are actually coming into our communities. I believe abortion, reproductive care is a healthcare decision. Reproductive care is healthcare, and healthcare is a human right. If we want to say, and I think tomorrow, I'm closing this, tomorrow you'll hear that it's up to the person, and that's why we have the Equal Rights Amendment that we're working to pass. It will be passed another year. If that were true, we would all support the Reproductive Health Act and let every single person have their own decision, make their own healthcare decision. Really proud to be endorsed by Planned Parenthood and all of the other reproductive care organizations. Thank you.
I'm unopposed. Of course I'll accept the results.
Well, that's very generous, though. I mean, another person would take the floor for 5 minutes. I'm sorry. I'm not deliberately forgetting you. You can go ahead.
Yes, I would also accept the outcome of the elections. I have seen the commissioners work very hard in previous elections, and I feel pretty confident. And also just to comment on the abortion issue, abortion is a healthcare right. You know, there's a lot of fear mongering done on a lot of basic rights, and I think this is a healthcare right that affects more than 50% of the population. And we should not be scared of women who want to make choices and who want to especially make choices on their health. I'm also proud to be endorsed by Planned Parenthood, and we should not have to be fighting for something that we already won a long time ago, but this is sort of the divisive climate we are in right now. And I've had difficult conversations at the door with people who don't support it, but you know, I do think that we need to have those difficult conversations and win people over and make them less scared of these personal decisions that are very important to the people who make them.
Thank you. Okay, new question.
My question is for the candidate for the Assembly. Many people here feel very strongly about the MAID Act, medical assistance in dying, and we've been pushing and working on this for years. Can we count on your support?
Yes, and I have received, as soon as I announced my race, I have received many emails and letters specifically from New Paltz on this bill, and you know, all of the colleagues that I organized with are co-sponsors on this bill, and I intend to co-sponsor on this bill. And I have heard some concerns from some disability rights groups to make sure that, you know, it doesn't harm, unintentionally harm the disabled. And I just want to make sure that whatever reservations or concerns people have, that they are worked out, because I know that a lot of folks are waiting for this bill to pass, and there is a lot of, you know, suffering and pain that people have seen their family members go through, their friends go through. So I am very committed to this bill, and I think it will be one of the things that I hope to play an active role to making sure that it moves along in the legislature.
Thank you. I have okay, I'll come back to you once I've got everybody who hasn't asked.
Yes, I'd like to know, Michelle Hinton, your opinion on the MAID bill. It's something that I'm sure most of us are very concerned about, the MAID thing. You know.
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, kind of hearkening back to the reproductive choice question, healthcare decision should be your healthcare decision. I too have heard some concerns, and I agree with Sarah Hanna. If it comes to the floor, when it comes to the floor, I would absolutely vote for it. There are some communities here who I'm having tough conversations with to try to bring them with us. And we're continuing those conversations because I would like for them to kind of understand why it's important. But it's a bill that, I mean, I think everyone should have their own choice.
Thank you. You've asked. Somebody else new? No? Okay, I'll go back. You want to follow up then? Then I'll go to the gentleman who asked.
I understand it's hard to get it out of committee. How would you, both of you, how much work would you do towards getting it out of committee so it can be voted on? I'm not concerned about it being voted on. I think the members of the Assembly and the Senate would both vote for it completely. It's gotta be gotten out of committee, and that's where we need help.
Working with, I believe it goes to the healthcare committee, so working with Gustavo Rivera, who's the chair of the healthcare committee, happy to have conversations with him. We don't know who the spot in the Senate. I don't know who the new sponsor is going to be because the current sponsor is Diane Savino. She did not run for re-election, she retired, so we don't know who's gonna carry that bill. We'll know more in January, but happy to have conversations with them too and see what their strategy is as well.
Sarah Hannah?
Yes, I think that I fully agree with the concern of things just getting stuck in committees, especially in this assembly. That's what tends to happen a lot. I am hoping to play a role in not only advocating for the bill, for those who are in the Health Committee, but also I think between people who really want to see this bill passed and people who have concerns, because I personally feel confident that those concerns can be worked out. But I feel like that conversation is not happening. So I want to do my part. You know, the first email I got on this, I did make a promise that I would help to move this bill along and make sure we're not just looking at the obstacles and shrugging because it cannot wait. So I hope that I get to talk to you guys personally about this bill specifically, because I really think a dialogue needs to happen and we cannot keep people waiting on this.
Thank you.
This is a question for Sarah Hahn, and I want to ask a question about how you're dealing with the tendency of those in opposition to you who label you with the nomenclature of socialist, which is an old tactic in American society and American history. Bernie Sanders, we nailed him. Any progressive, I think probably Pat Ryan is a dangerous socialist liberal. I mean, the way the opposition is coming out, do you ignore it? How do you take it on? How do you redefine? How do you claim that term? Since many of us in this room are the beneficiaries of social welfare programs.
Absolutely. Well, yes, the attacks will call anybody a socialist. According to the attacks, Biden is a socialist. Everyone in this room is probably a socialist. But the thing is that when I talk to people, hardly anybody is concerned about the label. I think the only people who are concerned about the label who are already not inclined to vote for me for many reasons, and sometimes I've asked I've been asked by a concerned person, are you a socialist? And I say yes, because I want workers who do the work to be able to reap the benefits. I want to put people first before profits. I do not want our government to be at the mercy of corporations and corporate lobbyists. And they just move on to other topics because they agree. I think labels can be very divisive. Words lose meanings during election time specifically. Lots of things are just used as catchphrases without really going into what they actually mean. And I when Bernie Sanders ran, this district voted very favorably, and to be quite honest, he made it easier for people like me who are attached with that label to disarm people and make them understand that it's not anything dangerous, because I am very much committed to democracy. Our socialism has to be democratic. And that means the people who live in this society have the right to get involved in decision making and to build a system in which the work that people put in is rewarded accordingly, which is absolutely not what's happening right now. Lots of people feel like they've done everything that they can, and they're still struggling. If they're not struggling with the utility bill, they're struggling with the healthcare bill, with the housing crisis, but usually a lot of those things all at once. Nurses and teachers are struggling. So I think there's nothing shameful about wanting to put people before profits and wanting to put workers first because they're the ones who keep our world running.
Thank you.
I would like to ask Juan Figueroa why he thinks no one opposed him.
Because he's the sheriff. Thank you for that question. I believe it's because of all the hard work and dedication that I gave to the office, but more importantly, what the men and women of the office have been able to accomplish with all the changes that law enforcement have seen in the last 2.5 years. I've been in law enforcement for over 34 years, and I've never seen the change that I've seen in the last 2.5 years. So I'm proud of the men and women at the Sheriff's Office. I believe that you can't be a chief without Indians. It's a two-way street. And it's about ownership. It's about looking at the mirror. And if we have to change, because that's what the people wanted us to do, then that's what we're going to do. Not easy, but it was time. And it's been a unique experience for me. I'm honored to be the sheriff of this county. And like I said earlier, the state belongs to you. I'm just a caretaker. That's the way I run this office. And that's the way I deal with the folks that work with me. I'm very fair. And it doesn't, this is typically an apolitical position as a sheriff. Yes, you have to pick a party when you run, but when you're in office, you're the sheriff for everybody. And public safety is everybody's responsibility. So I think that's probably one of the reasons why I'm unopposed, because people know that I'm fair. Thank you for asking that question.
And because he's doing a great job.
Oh, good. I was getting ready to wind up, and now I got more questions.
This question is for Mr. Quigley. Back during the height of the pandemic, I understood, and I may not have all the facts right, but I understood that all the drug and alcohol treatment beds in Ulster County disappeared. If that's true, which I believe it is, I'd like to know whether this county is going to have drug and alcohol treatment beds again.
Westchester Medical Center, which took over the combined Kingston Benedictine hospitals, made a decision that was an economic decision for the hospital and did not reflect the needs of the community whatsoever. They elected to close the mental health beds that were present at the Benedictine campus on Mary's Avenue in Kingston. There has been a recent, I want to say transaction, but it is really a commitment from Westchester Medical to restore those services, and it is undergoing, from what I have been told, regulatory review in Albany. So the beds should be restored. I can't give you a timeline. I'm not on the inside and I'm not a party to the discussions. But from the information I have, they are moving forward to come back, which an action which I support, because our community cannot be without these. I was talking to Steve Kelly today, who is the CEO of the Ellenville Hospital, talking to him about his involvement at the Ellenville Hospital in the areas of mental health. And he gave me, there are limited facilities outside of Kingston, as he explained to me. Medical care in Ulster County is Kingston centric. And because you're closer to Poughkeepsie, you will be benefiting from medical facilities in Poughkeepsie and the doctors in Poughkeepsie, but we need to correct the problem in Kingston.
Thank you, really important question. We were successful. There was a big crusade of which I was a part of, County Executive Ryan at the time was a part of, and all of our partners in labor, standing out in quite literally rain, snow, heat, fighting and calling for these beds to come back. We were able to get half of them back, but we've been continuing to call for the rest of them in a full restoration. They were moved in the height of the pandemic, as you said. One of the challenges is healthcare costs. And so I'm actually working on legislation. I fought for 2 years now to increase the reimbursement rates for mental health and detox because they're significantly lower than other healthcare reimbursement rates, which is why it's easy on the chopping block to get rid of. And they told me we needed to write formal legislation. We couldn't just advocate for it. So my office is working on formal legislation to be fighting for that now again formally in the budget in this coming year to at least have parity for mental health and detox reimbursement rates with all other healthcare. And then we also have to increase those even further because we're losing healthcare services in our rural areas, but at least as a first step to get parity to make sure that they're not the first things to leave.
Thank you both.
There is one issue that has been a long-standing issue in this community. It goes back 25 or 30 years. It is the fact that the Orange County, Dutchess County areas are part of the New York City SMSA, and that affects the reimbursement rates. Ulster County is not part of that SMSA, although we compete with both of those counties for doctors, the services of doctors and nurses, and we are affected by the wage rates from those other outside communities, but our health institutions do not get the reimbursements from the federal and state government that they should be getting given the competitive nature of our healthcare system.
Thank you. Okay, who hasn't asked it? You have, did somebody else over here raise their hand? Okay.
I have a good question.
I'll come back to you, sir. All right. We'll do these two more, okay?
This is for our state senator. The history of Albany is wrapped up with corruption as much as we like to think it isn't. But I've been studying and watching Albany politics for many years. And I like to think, that things are improving with ethics committees. I know our former governor created the Moreland Commission, and then he decided to close it down. I mean, that's power. And I was wondering what your take is on this. How can we, as citizens, know that the people in Albany are policing themselves, making the right decisions for us, and not lining their own pockets, which, I mean, I could list names going back, but I'm not. But, I hope things are taking a positive turn when it comes to that.
Thank you. Yes, Albany, much before my time, has a very storied past. And something I think we're all, even being a member of this institution, right? These hallowed halls, it's embarrassing and it's infuriating that, we here in New York have a legislature that is marred by people who have absolutely used it to line their own pockets, been corrupt, use it to get ahead, to help their families, their friends, their neighbors. There is a big push, and that's one of the great things about 2018 is there was a whole new crop of people that came into the legislature, that specifically the Senate. That's what flipped it to be a real Democratic majority, not the Independent Democratic Committee, the IDC, but a real host of new people who are committed to making sure that government works. Mostly because we've all been part of government that hasn't worked, right? We're still fighting to much of what Sarah Hanna said, right? We're still fighting to get solutions to things that have been on the table for decades. We talk about renewable energy. I remember driving with my dad when I was 7, talking about battery storage and trying to get subsidies shifted from fossil fuel industries into renewable energies to bring companies to upstate New York that would have really started this innovation and not being able to get it through by people of his own party. And so it's incredibly infuriating to me as someone who's 34, trying to plan my own family, trying to plan my own future, making sure we got into office to actually make stuff work for us. And so for me, this is my full-time job. We're fully committed to making sure that the work that we're doing is for public service. It's not about being politicians. It's not about having our name on or our face on billboards or any accolades or any of that. It's really to get stuff done. And in the budget this year, because it costs money. We created, JCOPE has kind of been that ethics commission for a long time, but it was more of a kind of previous governor entity. We created a new commission, a new ethics commission, which is being set up. It should be much more independent. Not over, like, we've kind of removed ourselves and making sure that people are actually being held accountable for if there are bad actions. But I mean, you have my commitment, and again, I can speak for many of my colleagues who are fully committed to making sure that Albany actually works for people and not for people who are then elected to use it for themselves.
Excuse me? Sarah Hannah, do you want to address that?
Sure. I mean, I ran for this office after witnessing as an organization, as an organizer, what was falling through the cracks and why, you know. And I think that a lot of people, when I ran, talked about, well, what is your experience? Because people expect politics is needed for politics, but sometimes, you know, maybe the antidote is needed for politics. And I'm hoping to bring my skills as an organizer, to be an organizer in office, because I think what's needed is, one, we really need to be able to stand up to corporate special interests. I've seen them, you know, in real time exert real pressure on things that are good for people that come very close to passing. I've been organizing on this renewable bill to build public renewables, and you know, one of the criticisms from private corporations was that if we allow the state to make its own renewable energy, it would not be fair to them because the state would be too good at it, you know. So we're dealing with kind of very inappropriate responses to the level of and the scope of the crisis. But I think what's needed is you have to be able to stand up to those corporate interests by not taking their money, but also really organize within Albany. I truly believe there are many people in Albany who do want to do the right thing. It's just that it takes a lot of work to rally support behind specific things. You know, legislators are dealing with thousands of bills sometimes, and the assembly specifically, there's 150 members, which is a lot of people to rally. But I'm really hoping to do that is, you know, choose my priorities, which sometimes go against what private companies want, but choose those priorities and try to win support for those things, and be persistent in following up and opening conversations and dialogue with my future colleagues, so that we can once again not spend so much time just stalling and pondering over things, because we do have to start taking action.
Well, thank you. And we have one more question.
2 words, Central Hudson. Please explain what's going on.
We could be here for the next 3 hours, so I will be brief, but we can continue that conversation generally. Central Hudson is a mess, to put it just plainly. We've been in March, so a year ago, I'll just kind of say my work on it. Over a year ago, last summer, I was at the Woodstock Library Fair, and I got a phone call from Tyrone Wilson, the Human Rights Commissioner here in Ulster County, and he said to me, something fishy's going on with people's bills. We don't really understand it, but you gotta help. Can you look into it? And we did, and that's how we discovered estimated billing. And what we did immediately was write legislation to actually ban estimated billing, because no one should get an estimated bill. They should read your meter, and they should give you the accurate read. And so we've been pushing that. That's a bill that we were able to push through the Senate. It got sadly stalled in the Assembly. I look forward to Sarah Hannah helping me move it forward, because that is incredibly important. March 6th of this year, I questioned the chairman of the PSC about rate increases and the estimated billing scheme. March 9th, the chairman opened an investigation into Central Hudson for estimated billing. That investigation is going on currently. We have reached out to them asking for an update on that investigation, because it can't go on indefinitely. People need answers. So I'm eagerly awaiting to find an answer. It's an independent agency, so there's some legalities on how much we can kind of influence them, right, and the ways we can interact. But we are pushing that forward. We've also sent numerous letters to the PSC, to Central Hudson, and the governor in partnership with our other colleagues in government to call for rate increase stops. They should not be able to increase any additional rates or put on any additional surcharges or taxes. We've called for Central Hudson to put in their own shareholder money. They need to cover some costs. We're waiting to hear back a response from that, but we're doing, again, because the PSC is, we can't influence the PSC, so our hands are unfortunately a little tied. I talked to my colleague, though, Senator Shelley Mayer from Yonkers just last week, and we are getting together to think about how we can reshape and reframe the PSC, because we cannot be this beholden to not being able to actually get answers or get things done. So we're working to figure out how to make this a much better situation, but we've been pushing back on them as much as we possibly can and publicly shaming them and writing legislation so that they stop being such a terrible company.
It's in your DNA, the Central Hudson stuff. Going on way before you were born. Yes. Go ahead.
Central Hudson is also my favorite topic. 2 years ago I organized an online town hall that was called Central Hudson Must Go, so that's how I feel about Central Hudson. There are a few things, one is that I really do not think, like Michelle was just saying, the PSC, all things considered, has not been able to hold Central Hudson accountable, and historically, in fact, what happens is Central Hudson will ask for something, such as a rate hike, and it ends up getting a version of what it asked for, and so we have a very unreliable way of holding Central Hudson accountable. And I do think that, in the short term, we need to do everything we can to make sure this billing issue is alleviated. But in the long term, we really need to start thinking about, is Central Hudson the correct type of organization, the correct type of body to have complete control over the distribution of our energy. I always bring up FDR in terms of how many issues we are dealing with that he was trying to solve back then, and utility and electricity was certainly one of them. Especially at this time of inflation, I think that we have to start thinking about putting price cap on bills. And make sure that the gap is coming from the shareholders and not from taxpayers. There is also a community call for canceling the utility debt and making the shareholders pay. I 100% support that, and I would love to talk to the governor about that. And ultimately, we need to, the energy system is at the heart of our economy and is at the heart of our climate crisis. We really need to start thinking about if energy is a public good. If we do not want Central Hudson running our water system, should they be running our energy system? Because it is a very critical resource that people's lives depend on. And actually, just recently in town of Ulster, we met two elderly sisters who depended on equipment that they needed to survive, and their electricity went out, and they were terrified, and they had a devastating story about the horror that they experienced just not having sudden access to electricity. I am very much looking forward to working on issues related to Central Hudson.
Thank you. And so we're going to go to closing statements, and let's start with you, Sarah Hanna. Closing statements. Take 2 or 3 minutes to sum up or to address something that's on your mind that wasn't asked.
Sure, I want to talk about why I ran and what kind of hope I have for what I want to be able to achieve. There is, as I said earlier, a lot of division being stoked, pitting working people against working people. And in the meantime, the real culprits sometimes go unnoticed, even in this inflation. I think a significant portion of it is actually coming from price gouging. Whereas when I talk to very conservative voters, sometimes they will have identified the problem correctly, such as homelessness, but then they will find the wrong culprits, such as immigrants. And this is a very dangerous, volatile situation to be in, where we are blaming each other, who are at the sort of the bottom of what we're getting out of this system. So I really want to have long-lasting organizing conversations with everybody in this district, especially people who are disengaged from our political system, especially people who are reluctant to vote. The towns that we picked to door knock this time for the general election was picked on those criteria. Where do we have voters who are struggling but who have lost faith, who do not believe there is any point to participating? And those are the people we want to activate and inspire and motivate and bring back into our collective action, because the people who are struggling are the ones we absolutely need in our collective action. They will be the ones who will be able to provide fire to what we're trying to do. And so my hope is to think about what kind of organizing I can do past the election, because to be quite honest, running for office for me was just a means to get to where I want to be, which is organizing people and bringing them together, and building a foundation of compassion and kindness and fairness. It might sound naive if it's been repeated 100 times, but that is still our goal. We want our system by default to be kind, to be just, to be fair, and we do not want working people to be left behind as we encounter an increasing number of crises.
Thank you. And we'll go in reverse order. So Sheriff, you can.
I want to thank everybody again for putting this together. This is a great event. Like I said, I did it in 2018. A couple of programs I want to tell you about real quick. First of all, I have a Sheriff's app. So if you have a smartphone, you have an iPhone, you can download it. Just don't do the, what do you call that? That notices. Well, there's a part where they ask you, the notifications, that's it. Just say no, because if not, you're going to get text messages at 3 o'clock in the morning. You don't want that. But there's a Project Lifesaver. We run that program with the New York State Sheriff's Association. It's about sometimes when we get to a certain age, heck, I don't even know what I had for breakfast yesterday, but we forget things. And Project Lifesaver is for folks that are, if they wander off and they get confused and don't know where they're at, and as we lose our, we get cognitive issues as we get older, Project Lifesaver is there to protect our loved ones. So if you're interested in that program, I'm gonna leave my cards up here. We also have what's called the Yellow Dot program. So let's say, for example, if you have diabetes and you're driving and something happens, there's a yellow dot located in the back of the vehicle. In your glove box would be instructions and possibly medication to help you. That's the Yellow Dot program. So please take advantage of those programs. Of course, my Oracle program, there's a referral in the app as well. You can fill it out and send it in if you have any loved ones that are addicted to opioid and oxycodone, and we'll try and get you help. My folks are pretty good at it, and having social workers and peer advocates in the sheriff's office embedded with the sheriff is something new in law enforcement, and it's an innovative program that I started in 2019. Again, I want to thank you all for having me here this evening. I ask for your support and vote in November to be your sheriff once again. Thank you.
Hello, thank you. I want to start too with thank you so much for having us and for spending the time with us tonight. I'm really proud of the work that I've been able to do in just a short period of time in the legislature, and I'm really proud of the partnerships I've been able to build in that time too, including with our sheriff, who I'm proud to have the endorsement from, and making sure that we're also bringing forward our colleagues in the legislature, some of my colleagues from other communities, to come and meet with the sheriff and to see the Oracle team and to hear about the OVERT program so that they can see the innovative work that we're doing here and use those programs in other parts of the state. And hopefully in the future, make them statewide programs and statewide initiatives, because it's true, the work that's happening here is unique across our communities, unique across our state, and we should be elevating and uplifting that work. And so that's what's really exciting about being able to be in the room, being able to build those relationships, being able to have the conversations, and think holistically about what we want our communities to look like. There's a lot on the line this election. There's a lot of, as Sarah Hannah said, there's been a lot of fear mongering. There's a lot of pitting people against each other. But at the end of the day, we have an opportunity to show people what we believe in here in the Hudson Valley, to show people the kind of world that we want to live in the Hudson Valley, and the kind of rights and respect and beliefs that we carry here. And our state legislature, as I said earlier, has never been more important. Making sure that we have people who are pro-choice, who are working for our communities every day, who are in the room to be able to bring resources, be able to bring people together, who are working with our law enforcement to keep our communities safe, and also doing as much as we can to bring costs down and hold corporations like Central Hudson accountable. That's the work that I feel incredibly privileged to be doing. It's the work that I'm really excited to continue to do over the next term. And again, I thank you for your time and humbly ask for your support in this election, because a lot is on the line, but it's a really exciting moment for us to be able to create the future that we all want to see. Thank you.
Thank you for having me here tonight. I just want to leave you with a few thoughts about Jim Quigley. I spent 35 years in private industry. I got to a point where I asked myself, what do I need to fulfill my life and fulfill my commitment to my community that has been so generous to my family over so many generations? It was that fundamental question that I answered, which is the reason I chose to go into public service. I have spent 13 years running the town of Ulster. I have a tremendous amount of experience and knowledge that has been combined with the private industry and the governmental affairs to be able to direct Ulster County. Like the sheriff, there have plenty of times when we've gotten those phone calls at 2 and 3 in the morning and we've responded. We've gone out. That's called commitment. That's the commitment I make to you to carry forward in the Ulster County Executive's office. Thank you.
And I thank you for having me back again, and I want to give a special thanks to Dorothy Jessup for reaching out to me. Yes, okay, I will. She wants me to, huh? Yes, so just, I'll remind you quick, that's one more thing I wanted to say, but tomorrow, same time, same place, you have Jen Metzger, who will be here running for county executives, State Senator Susan Serino, Congressman Pat Ryan, and candidate for State Senate, Pat Sheehan.
State Assembly.
State Assembly? Oh, okay.
Sue's against me.
We pulled this together really quickly, so forgive me.
Sue's against me, Pat's against Sarah Hannah.
Oh, okay. But I just want to share a personal story very quickly. It involves Dorothy and the length of our friendship. I served many years over different generations on the New Paltz Board of Education, and Dorothy worked as a professor at the sociology at the college. I don't even remember what the subject was, but we had a very different point of view on a very important topic. And if you remember, you please say so. So I said, why don't we talk? So we went down to the Gardens of Nutrition in New Paltz, beautiful by the river. We sat and we talked for like 2 hours, and we came to understand, you know, I think I might have had more of the nuts and bolts at that time, but we've had a great friendship since. And you know, it's I've held a variety of positions of service over time, and it's the dialogue that makes all the difference, which is why this is so important. And so I hope you'll all come back tomorrow night. I hope you'll tell your friends, and we'll have more people. And there'll be, you know, as we break up, if you want to talk with any of the candidates, please feel free to do that. Anything else?
We have to clear. What? We have to clear the auditorium at 9 o'clock.
So it's 15 minutes till 9 o'clock, and then you have to all get out of here. So, Dorothy and I have to talk about that yet. So, oh, thank you. Well, then I will. Okay. Good night, everybody.